Oh, me. I think I ate too much breakfast this morning.
Now, was it you forgot to hit the record button on those the first time?
No, those rolled. It was
it was the audio.
Yeah.
We didn't get the.
So the mics are running back to his sound room back there.
Yeah.
And so it keeps it from. We did an hour and 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And when we went back there, he was like
rehearsal.
He was like, crap. Yeah, well, let's do it again.
Yeah. The bad part is, it was exhausting. Like, to try to figure out how to do it without talking to anybody else, just me and you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Well, and it wasn't that we couldn't talk or feel space. We've been thinking about everything we were going to say for a long time, but it was so hard to.
It's not like having an audience.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. It's really just a conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
It's just a guided conversation.
Yeah.
That we've planned out. But the first time thinking exactly of what we wanted to say.
So people know what we're doing.
Right.
That's the biggest thing.
Right. But yeah, I'm ready to roll when you are. Unless.
Did you say that y'all had to have a tooth pulled on your dog yesterday?
Yeah. So Harley's the little. He's a Havanese, which is like.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Well, it's like a white Shih Tzu. No. I don't know.
Not really a poodle.
No, he's like a little. What's another name that those dogs they get confused closely with probably a better known breed, and I'm trying to think of. But he's a little white dog that weighs.
Little curly haired thing?
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. He's a real sweet little dog. He has seizures about once a week. He just draws up and just shakes. Weirdest thing. And the vet has said don't hurt him, because he's fine afterwards. Like 2 or 3 minutes of season, and then he's shaky. Kind of walks like he's drunk for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Real kind of funny. But no, his breath had been stinking like bad. Like if you got him anywhere in the vicinity of your face, it smelled like rotten bologna and fish, like
Ooh.
Just disgusting. So he had they took him yesterday to the vet in Yadkinville, and they gave him a flu shot. I didn't know the dogs could get the flu, but apparently there's a dog flu. I don't know, but they gave him a flu shot, and then he has to have a second flu shot. I don't think we're going to take him back there for that, because it's like a 45-minute drive or more from our house.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was rotten tooth, but he's doing better now.
He's a good dog.
He is.
I mean, he's just quiet. And
So you have one or two?
Two.
Three. 2 or 3.
Well, we have two. He came from her.
And you got Hank.
Yeah, I had Hank before she moved in, and then he's a 100-pound German Shepherd. Harley's a 8-pound Havanese.
Does he freak out when he sees the seizures?
Pays no attention.
Really?
Yeah. Now
that's weird.
Now when Harley used to live at Lauren's parents' house, they have another dog, Missy. Missy is a squirrel dog. I don't know, mountain Vice.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But they're just for like squirrel hunting. That dog has never hunted a squirrel. It's the most pampered,
Oh, yeah.
cute dog. It's about the most loving dog you ever meet. But anyway, Missy when Harley would have a seizure at night or in another room, would go get somebody and bring him back.
And Hank just don't care.
No, he's oblivious. He's kind of stupid.
He likes his cousin, Dale Henry, though.
No, you don't.
Who's Dale Henry?
Dale Henry's Haley's dog.
It's one of them Wackeremers, German.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like a silver
But,
lab.
Yeah.
The whole time they're together, Hank goes, every time he gets close to
Yeah, well, Hank has what the liberals call personal space bubble or safe space.
Yeah.
And if you're one of us,
he's good.
Yeah, but if it's a dog, especially a big dog, and it gets close to his face, he gets, shows his teeth.
Yeah.
He won't bite him, but he'll growl.
Sometimes he gets real annoying and he goes to a higher pitch.
Oh.
I've learned with German Shepherds, because, my brother has 2 of them. right next door. They have some weird quirks. I mean, like one of his dogs has anxiety issues whenever you are separated from it for a long time. It sounds like a dying child. Have you ever heard Ace make that noise?
No, just
Oh, it's horrible.
They're one owner. They really protect that one. He really, you can tell he's Lodge's dog.
Yeah.
well, and that's the funny thing is, Haley doesn't like to hit Del Henry. Now he's little. Now I'm not saying hit like all the time.
Disciplinary,
right?
Guidance.
And so this is a funny story, but about 2 or 3 Sundays ago, we always go to their house Sunday evening for dinner and hang out, and we always bring Hank, always have. Well, Haley comes too, and always has pretty much, unless she's got something going on. And so she started bringing Del Henry. So we have both the dogs. And and so it's been going on for months. Them two, because Del Henry, all he wants to do is play. See, Hank loves, his world revolves around the ball.
And fetching.
And fetching the ball.
Yeah.
And so all he wants to do, we'll be sitting there after dinner, during dinner, and he'll bring a ball to you. And he'll put it right at your feet, and then he'll walk a little ways and wait for you to throw it.
Del Henry can't focus on nothing.
No.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
So what he does, he likes to bump into Hank. That's his form of play in like wrestling.
Yeah.
Hank does not like that. So
they'll be under the table while we're trying to eat, and you just
they'll
shaking everything underneath you.
They'll hit the bottom of the table and knock a fork up in the air. I mean, it's wild. But anyways, Haley got a shock collar for him, but it don't work. It beeps. It beeps, lights up, and will shock. I've shocked him one time.
Yeah.
She don't like to hit him. And honestly, Haley can only hit so hard, and that dog is like 100 pounds now.
Yeah.
So a few weeks ago, we were sitting around, and they carry on from the time they're together. Hank will not stop yelling like a husky. Like,
starts to get on your nerves.
Oh my gosh. So finally, I've back from my disciplinary times when he used to spank me and stuff. I know where he keeps his belt. So finally, I got so sick of it, and Haley just going, Del Henry, quit. Del Henry, come over here.
I can't wait till you have kids.
Well, yeah. But anyway, so I went to the coat closet by the kitchen and got his belt out.
Yeah.
And immediately, see, Hank knows what that means.
Yeah.
Hank went and sat by the door and laid down and didn't do anything. He's terrified of the belt. Del Henry's still goofing around, so I give him a little pop on the butt, just a little one, and he kind of looks at me like, "What'd you do?" So then Hank comes back around a little later, and Del Henry starts going at him, just kind of, dogs will butt nip, just playing, and he was doing that, making Hank, and I went over. I mean, bow, and hit that dog in the butt. His butt went down, and his head went back, and he took off. Solved the problem. So now he'll just take the belt by his chair, and when we're sitting in the living room hanging out,
they can hear the buckle jingle.
And they'll stop.
Just hear the buckle jingle.
Hank's ears go down, and
they actually both got up on a little place on the couch and laid beside each other, and just like statues, just laid
like
there for
problem solved.
Yeah. And so anyway,
the funny thing about that is, I like Australian Shepherds. Well, you said that about the shock collar and how it didn't work. You remember Titus?
Oh yeah,
the really big one, the big Great Pyrenees we had. He was 170 pounds. He was huge.
Oh man!
And I got one for him because they're stubborn. And I remember, they're so fluffy that I would hit that shock to try to get him to listen to me, and he'd go. And he'd look down, and he'd look around, trying to figure out what's past it. And then he'd go back to whatever he was doing.
That's them dogs that look after sheep.
Yeah. We still got the system.
There was one online. I guess free, 6 months old, a female, and I started sending lives. And I said, "No, Lauren probably kill me if he decided," because there used to be one up the farm as our neighbors.
Yeah, I remember
Cletus, and he was just the sweetest. He was a good dog.
You were talking about dogs making noises, though. It's funny, Brandy, Australian Shepherd. Technically she's mine, but she's always lived with my parents, so she's still there. Well, my mom never got over Jessie dying. You remember the big yellow lab?
Oh, yeah.
Really good dog. So she got a new lab about a little over a year ago. She got a new lab puppy, chocolate lab named Oakley. and he's young, he's full of energy and all that. And Brandy's getting old, and Aussies are notorious for being mean and hateful anyway. And he'll get up and he'll put his nose right up against her face, and he'll go. And she'll get so mad she'll show her teeth, but she won't look at him. She'll cut eyes sideways and she'll show her teeth and go like that. And he'll take his paw and he'll go. He'll stick it right on her head and just look at her. Oh,
we'd be outside back in the summer, and Hank would be, chase the ball, and then he'd be about to die. He'd be over there and just a panting, and his tongue would be going like this, and that's what Dale Henry. He was more of a puppy, but he was fascinated with that long tongue, and he'd go over and try to bite at it and play, and Hank would be going,
trying
to
put his tongue back, but he's panting too hard. Yeah.
It was crazy.
I love dogs, but they can. When it's Sunday and you're relaxing and you're just trying to sit there and you got one dog who's obsessed with balls and he'll bring you a slimy, nasty toy.
Yeah.
Put it on your nice Sunday jeans. That's the only pair that you keep clean.
So that one dog was named Brandy.
Brandy, yeah, she's still alive. And then I've got another Aussie named Judith Marie. And then we've got Willow, the other Great Pyrenees, and then the big one, Titus. He died last year, which I'm no more dogs. We've got 3 kids. I'm done with kids, and I'm done with dogs for a while.
We had one, a golden retriever named Brandy, when the kids were little, and Lodge was little, and Lodge and that dog was thick as thieves. I remember working on a trailer or something behind the house. Lodge was probably 5 years old, and Brandy was laying behind me. I knew they were back there, and things just got quiet, and I looked around. Well, Brandy's laying on the side just looking at me. Lodge is laying on Brandy like a mattress.
Yep.
His head's on the dog's head, and they're just watching me work. And that was one of the worst times when she got hit, and I was taking all 4 kids to school. I think Savannah was in high school and Elijah was in elementary. But anyway, she was laying there as I was leaving. And I got out of the car before I got out on the main road just to check and be sure she wasn't still alive. But I remember coming back to the car and looking. I could see lights through the window, and I could read his mouth. And he was going, "She ain't dead. She ain't dead."
Yeah.
And he grieved. He was probably 6 years old, 7,
something like that. Yeah.
He grieved for months. I'd play on the Civil War song "Shuckin' Farewell," and he told me one time, says, "Daddy, don't play that." Says that makes me think of Brandy.
Yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful songs ever, but it's sad. It has a sad.
Oh yeah, you're right. But I think kids are better if they have a dog. I do. I always wanted my dogs to be where they could play with my kids. But the Great Pyrenees, they say you can't let them off the leash. They say a Great Pyrenees off leash is a disappear because they won't stay put. And for whatever reason, before Titus died, he got to where he would actually stay off leash. And I've got a bunch of pictures and videos where he's with my oldest son, Colton.
Was he fixed?
No.
Really?
No, he was not fixed.
Amazing.
And he was right there sticking with Colton. So I don't know if he knew something was going on with him. But yeah, man, you talk about when you lose a dog, that is a hard thing. And my dad's had a good point when Titus died. He said, a good dog has something happen to it a lot. He said a dumb dog will live forever. And he's right. Usually the worst dogs, they won't go away.
Well, that's like
that needs to be written down somewhere. Yeah.
Phillips Cruz's dog.
Oh,
Dusty?
Yeah.
Is Dusty still alive?
I have no idea.
Okay, he was ancient.
Yeah, that dog was like 15 when we were teenagers.
Yeah.
But that dog, I remember them telling me.
It was just old mutt, right?
Oh, yeah. Its hair was like a Brillo pad.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah, I mean, you pet it and you're like, oh.
I called him Dinky because that's what I thought of when I petted him.
Oh, yeah. Well, so it had a real weird place in one of its ears. And I asked Cody about it, and he was like, yeah, my dad was shooting a shotgun or something in the backyard, and the dog kept scaring off whatever animal he was trying to shoot or something, and he shot at the dog, and a pellet hit his ear. And but I mean,
he'd go after all kind of varmints. So
one time, this is when you were in Tennessee doing the audio technical stuff,
audio engineering,
yeah. Me and Cody would go to Wyatcher school, and I'd bring him home afterwards before he got his license. And it was dark when we got home. And I remember we pulled in to their long downhill driveway, and we're at the top, and they had trees on all sides. And we got down there, we could see Dusty sitting at the bottom of a tree. And so I stopped the car, and Cody's like, he's got something treed. I wonder if it's a coon or possum or whatever. And so we get out of the car, and he's having a fit, just shaking his tail, looking up. And I don't know if I had a flashlight or what, but we were able to shine some type of light up in the tree, and it was a cat. It was a stray cat up there, and it was way up there. And so Cody, for some reason, takes us. He's like, watch this. He takes a stick, just a little stick, throws it, and hits the cat. The cat jumps out of the tree from had to be 20 feet up. It was way up there.
Yeah.
Hits the ground, and as soon as it was a race. And I'm talking about that dog could flat move. And it was running. And finally, the cat, for some reason, Philip had that Chevy, that white Chevy, real nice. He kept real good care of. It jumped in the wheel well. The cat jumped on top of the tire in the wheel well, and Dusty didn't try to go in there. He just stayed right outside the wheel well, right at the tire, and we were watching, and the cat jumped out trying to get away, and that dog grabbed that cat by the head, went boom, killed it.
Yep.
I mean, shook it to death.
Which was sort of awesome to witness.
It was like National Geographic.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Da-da-da-da-da.
It was amazing, and it shook it and crunched its bones. I mean, I've never seen, and it's not like a massive dog. He was only 50 pounds.
No, yeah, he wasn't big at all. I think the chances of PETA sponsoring us have gone down pretty
I mean,
significantly.
we didn't do it. It was a dog versus cat.
Yeah, but you were talking about disciplining your dog with a belt earlier and shocking him and all that.
Well,
I don't disagree with any of it. I'm just making a joke.
Well, and that's the thing is you see who's that weird fellow, Caesar Milano? No, Caesar,
Oh yeah.
who talks or not talks to dogs, but
Does that little noise at him?
yeah, and he may be right about certain things. I don't disagree with, but I think with a dog, if you probably like a child, but if you set a precedent early and a little pain compliance, it goes a long way. So you don't have to hit them and you don't have to discipline them.
You don't have to yell at them over and over and over and over.
Right.
But with Hank, you'll never have to use it on him.
No.
You'll never have to. It's done. He knows.
Right.
You just show it to him, or see, he probably even knows what the word belt means.
Anything with free will is going to try to figure out where the established boundary is, and you have to set it. And when you do, you can set up a relationship for respect.
Right.
But if you don't, you're just going to have a really bad dog or a really bad kid. And we could do a whole podcast on what's wrong with people right now because people didn't hit them with belts. But
well, and the thing with PETA is I watched that Yellowstone. I didn't want to watch it right when everyone else was doing it, but I watched it. And there's an episode where there's it's just an activist for animals that, they have a livestock office. If you haven't watched the show, you need to. You would love it.
actually, we started watching it.
Oh, there you
like
go.
2 weeks ago.
Well, anyway, there's a part, and he's the John Dutton's the main dude. He's the boss over pretty much everything. But he walks over to the head lady who's in charge of all this, and is like, "So what's your deal?" And talking about cattle and doing all this to them, treating them bad, then killing them for food, and he's like, "So all the soy and whatever you eat, you realize everything in the ground and around it and beneath it, the worms, the frogs, every little animal you kill by spraying it and getting it ready and all this." And it made a good point that it's like, it's not that you care about all living creatures, it's just what's cute enough.
Yeah. What bothers me about that is people who fall into that category, they always want to look at it from the perspective of what's easy to digest. And I don't mean that with food. I mean that as in what they can see. They don't want to look at the big picture. Mm-hmm. So when you're not willing to even consider that you could be wrong. See, if somebody could prove to me that when I hunt, it was detrimental to the longevity of the species and my family and everything else, it might be the hardest thing I ever did. But if you could prove to me I was wrong, I would stop. They're not interested in the truth. They don't want to know.
No.
For example, we were talking a couple weeks ago, and the lady told me that her daughter, who's in college right now, she's like, well, cows are bad for the environment and all this stuff because of the emissions they put off.
The poop.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, we're on this whole electric car craze right now, and your government wants you to think that that's the future. We're all going to, deal with global warming and burn up in a few years. But the reality is the way we go about farming right now with like your plants, your soy, the way we plant corn and all that stuff, it's the biggest release of carbon into the environment there is. Whereas if you just let cover crops do what they're supposed to, but they don't care about that, which tells you it's all just a joke.
Exactly. And the problem is that people only know half truths. And
they don't want to learn the rest. They're going to keep their head up their butt.
And I heard a guy who all he does is study about cobalt. So cobalt is in every smartphone and every smart car. And cobalt is only mined in certain places, and it's just like slaves working in a mine.
Yeah, it's horrible, brutal conditions, and it's bad for the environment.
Right, and see, Apple, Samsung, whoever makes the Toyota, Prius, whoever makes all these smart
Tesla cars, all of it.
No one's saying anything about it.
Yeah,
because these people's lives, it's like the same. There's probably 5-year-old kids making these, Nike shoes and Adidas and all this, and some
in China
barely getting enough to eat each day, just a bowl of rice a day.
So some dude who wears the shoes can tell you that you need to save energy and be smarter with the way you live your life.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. You have the NBA and NFL players who make millions and millions a year, and they're they wear a different uniform, different helmet every game, new shoes, new gloves, and all this stuff is made in China in a factory somewhere by people that are way less fortunate who are just trying to scrape by. But
hypocrisy at its finest.
We
could go off on that'll be another day.
Next time me and you, if we can't get a guest, we'll just riff about that for a while. But anyway,
let's get on with our actual. All right. 21 minutes in, we'll actually get on to what we're actually going to talk about today. So, welcome to the Donnaha station. This would be episode 3. If you don't know anything about what we do, we talk to local people, go over local history, good old stories from people that we grew up listening to, and dig a little bit into some of the life lessons that can be gleaned from some of those people and circumstances around us. Today, our guest is actually Elijah's dad, Mr. Thad Cox.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Thad, if you don't mind, why don't you give a little introduction on who you are, what you do, and...
All right, well, I was born in 1959 in Baptist Hospital, because there wasn't no Forsyth Hospital then, and I grew up in Stanleyville, North Carolina, right across from where Bill Plemons, or what's it called now? The travel trailer place or camper place.
Still the RV, Bill Clemens RV, I think.
Yeah. I grew up from there. Of course, there wasn't anything there when I was born. It was just woods. And then on it's called Sunset Drive. I grew up there, and then I went to Rural Hall School, Rural Hall Church of Christ at the time. It was, different, of course, a different time and different place, and I ended up going to what a lot of people don't even understand, especially of late over the last years with everything going on, that during the 70s, early 70s, they kicked in what they call busing, with the civil rights movement and everything, where my brothers went to Northwest Middle School, Murray Road. By the time I went into middle school, I was getting ready to middle school, I didn't go there. They sent us from Rural Hall to Mineral Springs because they were desegregating, black and whites together. And then from there, we went down to East Winston, 9th, 10th grade, and most of us went to East, it was in East Winston, but it was Atkins High School, in 9th, 10th grade year. Then we did get to come back and go to North Forsyth where my brothers went. But this was all with the desegregation. This was in the early 70s. I look at it like we were kind of guinea pigs testing the waters and trying to get blacks and whites to come together. Now, the interesting thing was I had a lot of friends. The parents were basically like, we're not going to have our kids travel and go that far, so they started moving into Stokes County.
Yeah.
And here we have Ed Shelton and his brother Fortis, started making a mint on those Wood Creek and Timberline, all these small developments. Probably your grandpa, Mickey, probably started building houses for these people.
Yeah.
And I can understand. I had several friends that moved across the line and they didn't want to. But I think my mom and dad said, hey, this probably is a good thing. That they learn to get along and know each other, and after all said and done, I think it was. But what gets me is the younger generation, especially like a lot of the blacks, getting on their bandwagon and don't realize over 50 some years ago we were part of the experiment.
Yep.
And I walk away from it and I said there was good black kids, there was good white kids, there were black kids that were bullies, there were white kids that were bullies. There was one played ball with, got along with, and that was just a learning experience. And I walked away with it probably a better person. But when people start talking and don't know the facts, like anything else, it angers me. It gets me upset. I can't help it. You need to study stuff before you open your mouth and be sure that And a lot of places did it. Now Boston did it, integration, busing. They called it busing, and they had major riots. This is up north.
Yeah.
These wealthy white people didn't want their kids going to school into the black sections, and vice versa. And there was major every night on the news. Somebody was beat up in riots and fighting, and they pushed all this stuff on the South, saying, "Oh, you're racist. The South's racist." Blah blah blah. But then when it came to their front door, they were as worse as we were ever. So that was an interesting thing during that time in the 70s. But yeah, then I went on to college. I went 2 years to Wingate College, and really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. All I ever was good at was art, and I had a good, successful time at art in high school and got some awards. And so I went on to Wingate. Then I transferred to UNCG because I pretty much knew I wanted to do art, and I didn't want to go that far from home. And they had a good art program, and I got a bachelor's of art design. And then I kind of went through several jobs. I got down because I couldn't really get a job. You get this dream, and this is what college and this ideology of college will lead you to believe sometimes, that you're going to get that diploma and somebody's going to step right up and says, we got a corner office, $100,000 a year, and all you got to do. That don't exist.
Yeah.
And I worked several places making a little more minimum wage for a couple of years. I finally got a job with Sara Lee, but it was working in warehouses and picking orders, and the pay was better than minimum wage, but it wasn't that great. But I had to work myself into finally a position that helped, or the degree helped with, I'd got some experience as a proofreader and actually proofreading copy in the catalogs called Sara Lee, but Haynes Hosiery, where they send these catalogs out with just my size and hosiery and all this stuff. And eventually I got into working what they called a CAD room. It was actually all computers putting the catalogs together. And I did that for about 11 years till it got to the point. It's a typical job where you work your tail off, and the work itself you enjoy. It's not that bad. But the deadlines, because Friday would come and we'd have these catalogs, and the due date to go to the printer was on a Monday, and they'd come in Friday and say, we got all these changes, but it's still got to go out Monday. And so that's what happens when you work for a corporation or a company. So you have to come in. I got kids at home that I want to do stuff with Saturday. I have to come in Saturday. Sonia would have to get a babysitter Friday night, and then that tore her up. And then that meant she had to clean the house because she didn't want anybody coming to the house. It was a mess. So on Friday night, and then sometimes I had to go in after church, and and work, and then go back to church on Sunday night and not see the kids. So that went on about 11 years, and that's the only job I ever walked out on. I had a lot of jobs, but it got to the point where they wanted me coming, I think, 4th of July. And all these other suits, I call them, they go home. They make these changes. They go home and have their weekend. And so anyway.
You were doing the leg work while they were just telling you, yeah, fix that.
Yeah, and then
how long you left to work.
I said, why didn't you decide on this Wednesday? It gave me 2 days, and I'd had my weekend. But anyway, I left. I worked for my father-in-law a while at the garage, and I worked for the Spainhour Brothers for a while in the office. And then the whole time I kept, and that's a story in itself, kept trying to get into teaching because I had the art degree, and I kept praying. Well, I guess I could go ahead and tell it. I was working at the Spainhour Brothers in the office, figuring jobs and calling and doing all the stuff like your dad has to do, call a cement guy to come, call and get them to come check for where it's underground cables and wires and pipe and all that stuff. And but anyway, Ken Spainhour, who owned the company, he finally came to me and he said, listen, I'm 57, I can retire now, and he wasn't going to sell his business. He was going to auction off all his equipment, which was smart, and he'd be getting into the storage units. So he came to me and he says, I'm just letting you know that we're going probably another month, and we're going to try to get done with our jobs. But they didn't want me to tell anybody, and it was good. He was paying me good, more than I was worth. And he says, we don't want you to tell anybody, just the fact that we don't want the word to get out, because these guys, they find out we're shutting down, they may quit, and we can't finish the jobs. Pretty simple. And I said, okay. And a few weeks went by, and he says, you can start looking for something else if you want to now. So I'd already been sending in resumes, all that stuff, to Stokes County schools and Forsyth County schools, I think even Surrey County, just trying to find a teaching job. I mean, it'd be nice to teach, an art. But so anyway, I said, well, I'm going to call a guy named Mitch Smith, because I'd coached his daughter in softball with Savannah and Haley back, and I just knew him, and he was the maintenance supervisor for Stokes County schools. And just see, because like anything, the resumes wasn't working. It was, don't you call us, we'll call you. And just see if, and it's always the thing, it was the thing that I always was against, who you know. But I was getting desperate. I had, 4 kids and a house payment and a wife. And so I call, but a secretary answers, says, well, he's at a meeting right now. Now, you got to remember, there's only 7 art teachers in the whole county of Stokes, 2 high school and several middle school, and they spread the elementary art teachers all over the place where they don't get art very much. But anyway, so he's in a meeting, and she says, well, I'll have him call you back. And so a little while later, he calls back, and I said, you remember me? And I coached your daughter, Jennifer, and he was like, oh, yeah, you were great. She really was quiet and didn't have anything. Her brother and sister had something they was good at, and you helped teach her with softball, and she learned a lot. In fact, she stuck with it, and the next year she played the All-Stars and was a pitcher, and he just went on and on. And I said, well, I told him what was up. I was going to be out of a job, and that I really needed something, and I was wanting to get into teaching. And then to go back a little bit, because Sonia thought at one point when I was working with Sarah Lee, I was about to lose my mind. And I think she was really worried about me. And so I had wrote a prayer. I write down stuff a lot, and I wrote a prayer that I'm just putting in your hands, God. I'm going to let you have this. I'm going to step out on faith. I don't want to do stuff like catalogs like I was doing, because most people, 95% of the people, throw it in the trash when they get junk mail to sell pantyhose or whatever. And I said, I want you to use me. I want to be put in a situation where I can be beneficial to the human race. Use me for your glory. And I wrote that down. So go back, he calls me, Mitch called me back, and we had the conversation about who he knew I was. So I tell him, he says, well, you ain't going to believe this, but the meeting I was just in, and this is 2 weeks before school was to start, said the meeting I was just in, we got a vacancy for an art teacher. The chances are unbelievable. The day, 365 days out of a year, only 7 art teachers, and he was in a meeting for one. And the one had left, and one was moving, so it was at Walnut Cove Southeastern Middle School. And so he says, well, let me talk to the lady who became a good friend, Melissa Jessup's Human Resource. Let me talk to her and get back to you. So I took that Saturday, I was on a Friday, and that Saturday I took Haley and Savannah, they were little, up to Hanging Rock, camp and go swimming and all that stuff. And Sonia brought Lodge and Breton up the next day. And Sonia comes over and says Melissa Jessup called and said, you're just what they're looking for, and they want to interview you Monday over at Southeastern. And so I was like, well, okay. And there's the thing again, who you know, because she'd been the one kind of saying, you know, we'll call you. You don't call us. And all of a sudden they realized, you know, that I was good with kids. And also the next thing I know, I got the job. But here's the sad thing. This is for teachers. I took over a 50% cut in pay, going from being what I was called a pre-press technician when I was at Sara Lee, fancy name for a slave. But anyway, I went and took a cut, and I finally took a while to get the money up, but it was a real one of the first, other than having my kids, the first time I really was totally dependent on God and had to say, hey, I'm putting this in your hands, and I'm going to let you be in charge, and hopefully you'll provide for my family through this and all. And it was tough. It was tough, especially when we went to we left Wood Creek and went to a bigger house. We had to have more room because we had one sneak up on us we didn't see coming. Yeah. And so that means a bigger car and a bigger house and more of a house for him to destroy. But other than that, then I retired from teaching a few years ago. I mostly taught high school, and my last few years was in elementary, which was a good way to go out because those kids are so loving and just get so excited when we, for art class, and where the high schoolers, some of them would, and some of them was just another class, but it's like several people have told me, and people I've been around, when you put the Lord first or central in everything you do, then really you need, like it says in the scripture, you don't need to worry. He will look after you so much, and it takes years. It takes years to get to that point. Sometimes you got to go through stuff like that and build that confidence in the Lord, and you still lose it from time to time. You still say, "Oh, what's going on?" But that was a big turning point in my life. But
you said that about you had that prayer, and then so often I think that impact and doing something that makes a difference to people, that's really important to me, and it's something I've always looked for in my life, and I'm not even really sure I found it yet. But like you just said, you worked well over a decade and then some before you had your opportunity, but it also took faith. Yeah. Because once you were handed that opportunity, it took stepping out on faith with a pay cut. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times people, they ask God to give them an opportunity to use them, and they're impatient. Two, when it finally arises, they don't actually have the grit to go through with it, because it means you may have to question how you're going to make ends meet.
Sacrifice.
Yeah. But it worked out, and it did benefit a lot of people because you were willing to make that sacrifice and take the job.
Yeah, there's an old song by Seldom Seen. By a lot of bluegrass people do it. Rick Skaggs and Vince Gill, actually. It's called The Old Crossroads. But it's really a good song. But everybody comes to a crossroads. Yep. And you got to decide, do I go straight, right, or left, which is the direction. And And it works a lot better if you got God leading you. You say, "Oh, it looks easier this way. This way looks awful tough and hard, and a lot of potholes and bad stuff ahead." But then if you just follow His lead, it'll always come out the best. And I think that was, and I think of my nephew, Jalen Moorfield. He went through a bunch of stuff not long ago with his best friend got killed in a car wreck, and then my father-in-law, who everybody calls him Pa, Clyde Moorfield, died, which he'd worked with in the garage. And of course, he'd had a couple of kids, but still, he was at that cross. He still is. He still. I don't really know what's in his heart. None of us know exactly what's in people's hearts, but I know he has to be struggling at times and wondering which direction do I need to take, and and I would say to anybody, the strongest and biggest atheists out there, or agnostic or whatever, I would say to them, you're going to hit those crossroads, and you can just reject God and continue to reject Him, but your life is never going to be as good as it could be if you'd accept Him, follow Him, study His Word, pray every day, talk to Him, build that personal and intimate relationship with our Creator. Life is going to be so much easier and better. Still going to be tough times, but you've got somebody you can just hand it to and say, "Listen, I can't handle this. Here it is. Will you take it over for me?"
Well, that's another part of that is, I think a lot of people, they simplify it and they say, "Well, I don't see it. I don't have proof," and all that. But I just tell people that if I get the opportunity, if I am on the fence and I believe, if I just say no, I'm not going to believe in a God or whatever, and you die. This is very simple, but if you die and you don't believe, then you've lost everything. If you believe and you're wrong, just taking out the fact that I have faith and I've seen things and heard things that are just unbelievable.
Yeah, you're just talking about the facts.
The facts.
When you simply look at it from both sides.
If there's a Creator, just talking from that point, that mindset, if I believe and it's not real, I've given spare money that I don't need to people who do need it.
Yeah.
I've been kind. I've done things the right way. I've been nice to people, done stuff for others, thought about others before myself. Generally made the world a better place. I've lost nothing.
You had a set of principles. Yeah, right. And at the end of the day, you're still no worse off than they are.
Right.
I always like that saying, "There's no atheist in a foxhole."
Oh, yeah.
When life gets hard, there
you
are
spend
no
your
atheists.
life helping others, being honest, treating people with respect. Now, what is better than that? And but you got. I think the problem today, if you look at every situation of people, it's got a lot to do with parents. Parents make a difference. Mine did. I know they did. They raised me in church. They taught me right and wrong. I go back to my mom. I was talking about in the 70s being bused. But she grew up about as poor as you can get in Lawsonville, up on Jewell Road in Stokes County. And they actually would have straw mattresses, and they would do the straw themselves. They would put straw in and be this high, and then after they slept on it. But they didn't have their highlight of the week was getting a Sunday newspaper, and everybody read through it, and that's the way they kept up with the world back then. This is in the 30s and early 40s and during World War II and stuff. But still, she started selling Avon when I was in grade school. So I was 4 or 5 years old. She started selling Avon. And she did it more for the social thing. She was an extrovert big time, and she loved people and just talking with people. But the interesting thing was she would go to just everybody. and we had an old Rambler station wagon, and she'd put me in the back, and that's kind of, I tell people how I got my start with art, because she'd buy me coloring books and crayons all the time.
That's another thing I was
about to say, I'd love to get into how you got started.
Yeah,
because I had a stack of coloring books about that high, and she, every now and then we stop at one of those little stores on 65 there in Rural Hall, and she'd get me an ice cream sandwich. But the interesting thing, I call it Kiger Town, but she'd go there. There were some of the richest people in Rural Hall. But then she'd go across the tracks, say right there, kind of down behind where Hayworth Miller or whatever funeral home, and there's the black section. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know it. But we'd go there, and she'd go to those folks, and she'd sell Avon to them. And she would spend time with them. And I can even remember one family had a bunch of kids, black kids. And I loved going there because there's somebody to play with. They had a swing set, and we'd play. And I remember one time it was nap time, and about 4 or 5 of us, Mama made me just said, "Yeah, bear, it's your nap time too." And we got up there, and there were 4 or 5 of us laying sideways on the bed taking a nap while they talked Avon stuff. And she never said a word that they were different or anything. I just knew there was kids to play with. It's not until I got in public school till I noticed in one class there was one black kid in there, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why they set him on the other side of the room. Yeah. And I was like, why are they setting him over there? And we got to be good friends because we was both like the fastest in the classroom. We'd race, and I had a lot of respect for him because of that, and he could run as fast as me. But still, my parents, and that's the problem today. One, you ain't got both parents. You ain't got the father figure. It's just so much missing. And you see it teaching school. I can tell after 2 weeks when I was teaching high school down to elementary, if the kids ain't got both parents, if they are involved with church, there's so many things that not go to church. I'm saying involved. They're going to church camps, and they're going to more. They're just not taking them and sitting, but they got them learning from God's word at an early age, and they're teaching them at home, and even having good babysitters like Elsie Shropshire that teaches you about Zorro. And
I love Zorro as a kid.
But that was Elijah was little. He talking about heaven, and he told me, and I knew he got it from Mama Elsie, but he says Zorro won't be in heaven. And I was like, Zorro, what you got against him with the sword? He's always a good guy. And I figured out later he was trying to say sorrow, that there won't be no sorrow or sickness in heaven. He would say a Zorro. And but she was great. She was great. Not only did she teach him about the Lord, but she made great food.
Oh my gosh, black-eyed peas, mashed potatoes.
Oh yeah, good old Southern cooking.
Garden stuff. Yeah, she was great.
You were talking about your mom making a point to go there. A lot of people would say, and it's coming back around right now in society. We are definitely more divided now than we've been in a long time. We're just following what everybody else did. We didn't know any better. And most people think that way. And I pray almost every day for my children to be critical thinkers, to think for themselves and consider not what everybody else is doing, but what actually is important, what integrity would call them to do. That shaped you. Your mom could have done the easy thing, which is what everybody else was doing. But she made a choice. And we all have choices. But she made a choice to see the value of people in a time when that would have been a lot harder to do, and it helped shape who you are and the way you value people, and that's carried over to your kids and grandkids. And
well, the interesting thing is she probably could relate to the black people better than she could to the rich white people, because I think she knew what it was like. Maybe to have. She said one of the highlights when she was growing up, a fruit truck came by and spilled some apples, and they found them on the side of the road, and they sat there and ate till they about died. Yeah. And just she could relate to them just because of how she grew up during the Depression and things like that. And my daddy too. He had a little better off because they did have the farm up there. Mm-hmm. But still, they had to get water from the spring. They lived off the land. They had to learn or do their schoolwork by an oil lamp, and so it's remembering that. I think a lot of times where he came from, But yeah, I can't say enough about my parents and how they influenced me. And of course, Daddy was come out of World War II, and he was very strict disciplinarian. We talking about with the dog or disciplining the kids, but you walked straight and narrow, and it was yes sir, no sir, and all. And I'm glad for that, but I learned from it. And I said, especially when you have 3 daughters first, I'm gonna try to figure out a way. I still paddled and spanked and did all that, but I did a lot of talking, and I think that's the key. You got too many parents, especially if you involve alcohol and things, that they just beat their kids, and they never talk to them about what they did wrong, or they don't have a communication. And the older they get, what I realized was less discipline, but more talking, more hours of talking. You try to get them in a situation. And the problem today is it's hard to, because you got to go against these cell phones and video games and try to work in time, and that's hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people forget discipline is not the same thing as retaliation when you're angry. And I'm a parent of 3 kids, and all of them are 4 and under, so it can be very hard when they're not listening and you just want to beat their tail. But that's not actually discipline. That's just you taking your frustration out on your child. It's a lot harder to sit down and make yourself do the right thing and explain it to them and help them learn. And sometimes that means you have to show restraint, not retaliate.
Well, and that's one thing he never, all the times, and I did a lot of stupid stuff. A lot. We'll get into some of that probably, but he never, that I can remember, just jerked me up from the spot from what I was doing and spanked me.
Yeah. Now,
I'm 270 and a little big now, but back in the day when I was a little fella,
we're all scared of our dads.
Oh yeah, and the look and all that, and but he never once just jerked me up on the spot and spanked me right then and there. It was always a cooling off period for him, but I knew it was coming, and part of that, having to wait on it, is worse for you, but
that's a good thing though, because it lets you make sure your motives are in the right place before you go discipline your child. I'm not perfect at it, but I've tried to make a point with my son. If there's a situation where discipline is required, I will make him go sit for a few minutes, because he probably thinks I'm making it worse by him doing that, like you're talking about. But what I'm actually doing is I'm giving myself enough time to make sure I'm thinking the right way and my heart's in the right place.
Yeah. Right. Well, here's the result. I mean, no hair. But yeah, it's just like. Well, the Axe body spray story. Oh, yeah. See, we got 2 versions now, and I didn't know about it.
So, you tell your version, and then I'll. Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting in he's at middle school age. Middle school was the toughest for me with him, but I'm sitting in a recliner watching TV and just doing my own thing, and all of a sudden I hear in the kitchen. And I knew he was in there, or doing something. And all of a sudden, the smoke detector goes off. That's the most annoying noise, And I hear him go out the back door. And I'm yelling, "Hey, Judge, what's going on?" And so I come running in there, and he comes back in the door, and he looks at me, and he does this thing like, "What's going on?" and I'm like, and I've already tore up, and I said, "I don't know. You tell me." And he's like, "Oh," and so I knew. So I think I did start poking you in the chest with my finger. Now he was a lot smaller. He was. Yeah. I mean, he's probably the biggest middle schooler for his grade, but I'm poking him in the chest, and I had this ongoing thing with all the kids. If they at least tell me the truth, there wouldn't be any painful punishment. I might let them do something, or what they call grounded. But I said, "Now you tell me the truth." And so anyway, he says, and kids, you'll learn. They always start out with this: "All I did." So Lodge says, "All I did was take some Axe body spray and spray it on the kitchen floor and set it on fire." So I can feel all these muscles. Yeah. I done told him, if he told me the truth, I wouldn't do nothing about it. So I can feel all these muscles contorting in my, and I'm going, and so he says, then he comes back and said, this is what they'll say too. "Well, it ain't that bad, because it ain't like what some of the others do. At middle school, they spray it on their hand. They set it on fire. And I think I said something. I said, you mean there's something worse than a moron? There's a retarded moron? And he's like, so I said, all right, well, you told me the truth. Just don't do it no more. So I go back and I think I sat in for about an hour watching TV and doing all these muscle contractions. But so anyway, about a few months ago, I find out there's a whole different story that he did lie to me.
Okay. I'll take over from
Wow,
here.
this is years down the road.
Yeah, so that's the story that was told for years. And so here's the real story.
Did you have any guilt holding on to you all this time that it finally came
Well,
out?
I hope so.
Yeah, I felt pretty bad, but that's kind of one of the things I was kind of like. So the way it started is Brandon and Savannah were here, and we were in the kitchen right where it happened, and he was telling that story, and then he walked out, and we were all, me, Brandon, and Savannah were just standing there quietly, and I said, now y'all want to know what really happened? and they busted out laughing just at that. And I wanted to tell, but I didn't want to tell him.
Yeah.
It's like, that was the difference. So anyway.
Well, being he's 270 pounds instead of 120 pounds now.
Yeah,
It's
The time had finally come.
Right. So here's what actually happened. Yes, that was my inspiration. Morons at school, and they're all like, "Yeah, Axe." And this is when Axe body spray first came out and would get you any girl you wanted. Made everyone.
I remember everybody had Axe body spray.
It was horrible.
Well, when I found out that, I told Sonia, she kept buying it for him.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
don't buy it. He's using it as a
It's a
flamethrower.
flamethrower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is what happened that day. I was bored, and I thought to myself, they're spraying a little bit on their hand and setting it on fire. But I said, I don't want to burn my hand. I said, but I want it to be on my hand. That'd be cool. So I got a glove.
Uh-huh.
And it was a snow glove, like a.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it caught on fire.
So I saturated it. I didn't just do a little spot, which is
Yeah.
all you needed to do. I saturated the whole palm of it. And so I lit it on fire, and it was like a blue flame. It was cool. I felt like a superhero or whatever. And then I shook it to get it out.
It didn't go
She
out.
wasn't going out. And so I started doing this, like trying to close it, and
Kill off the flame.
it started melting to my hand.
Yeah.
And I could feel the heat coming through. So I was shaking it like this, and then the thing went off, and I was like, oh crap. So I went outside to the back deck, and I launched that thing and it was out there probably still burning in the yard when he came in there.
That's funny.
So you was shaking doing all that in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
And
While I
set
was
the
sitting in the
smoke detector
recliner
off.
in the living room.
Well, I was trying to be quiet about it, but yeah, the smoke alarm kind of helped cover that up a little bit. But that's the real story. I was about to have a snow glove melted to my hand with Axe body spray.
But see, I knew when I made the decision to leave Rule Hall was a great church, but I knew there wasn't anybody there, and I knew First Christian because the girls had already started going there for youth stuff.
Yeah.
Back with Donnie's brother. But anyway, I knew I was going to have to do something because I knew what he could be up to.
Yeah.
So we start coming to First Christian, and then I think Glenn actually would talk about the Allens, you guys, and what y'all did. And the more I thought about it, I said, good gosh, I got to get for the church camp or something, got to get lodged with Mitch's boys or one, because you got tractors, four-wheelers, animals, guns, all the things that he's going to love.
Yeah.
And so when y'all met up, that was kind of an answer to prayers, because I kind of foresaw it, if that's the right word, that might be a good. And I think it was. But if you remember, when y'all would start doing things and didn't have no grown-up supervision, I would come to you and I say, Jonathan, don't let Lodge do something stupid. Will you keep and just question him, or even call me or something? And
I'm just not sure why I was considered more responsible than you. Is the only part.
I've always been a few more years ahead in the show.
I don't know. We both kept each other from doing something stupid and helped each other do stupid things over the years.
If we could convince each other that it was
It was
not so
okay?
stupid,
Yeah.
Like, well, we could do it. Everybody does this or something. Well, then we would do it.
I like the goose story where y'all y'all tried to cook a goose.
Goose?
It was,
Yeah, the goose.
it was tough.
Killing or cooking.
Yeah.
I had what was I doing?
It was a
late.
You were late, and when you got there, so this is kind of like your buzzard story. I hope the statutes of limitations have run out on this one because
neither one of us
It
shot
was a Canadian goose.
Neither one of us killed it.
You're right. It was a Canadian goose, and they're a nuisance, and they were on the pond.
They poop every 20 minutes.
And they eat a ton of fish. My dad hates it, so he it's his fault. He encouraged me, really. But me and Levi were waiting on you, and I was trying to come up with something for us to do. So I said, well, let's go down here to the pond and shoot these geese. And I will tell you the truth. This is crazy. I will give Levi credit here. I shot like 9 times, and I don't know what was wrong with me that day, but I didn't hit the goose like at all. I'm like, dang, my gun sights are off or something. And he's like, well, you got 1 bullet left in your magazine. Let me try to shoot the goose. I'm like, go for it, buddy. And he nailed it. He drilled that goose like right in the head and killed it.
Who was this?
Levi.
Really?
Yeah, 1 shot. Levi killed that goose, and it was dead.
Levi's a good shot.
He is a good shot.
Yeah.
And so we go out in the John boat because I remember my dad came out. He's like, well, you shot one of them. Now you got to get it off the pond. So, okay. I'm like, hey, we're going to do a camp out tonight. Let's cook it. So we go get the goose. We pluck the goose a little bit, and then we realize we don't want to pluck this goose because it's going to take a really long time. Yeah, so we were all going to camp that night, and so for whatever reason, I just could not shoot that day to save my life. And so I shot 9 times, didn't shoot the goose, and Levi shot my last 22 bullet and nailed that goose right in the head, and it killed over. And we had to get it off the pond, so we took it home. And we started to pluck that goose, and I was like, I'm not plucking this goose. This is stupid. So we skin it. You know, I'd skinned plenty of stuff. I'd never plucked a bird before. So we skinned this goose, and we had the breast meat, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was big. It looked like huge pieces of chicken. And we were camping that night, so I'm like, well, let's do a stew while waiting on Elijah. So we throw these 2 goose breasts in this pot with like some cream of chicken or something and a bunch of vegetables, and we get it over our fire and we're cooking, and we're like, well, we need to go get some firewood. So we let it cook down for a while. But let me back up. Before we put all the other stuff in it, we just tried to boil the meat down and get it to where it was cooked all the way through. And I'll never forget it. We took the lid off that pot, and those 2 pieces of breast meat that looked just like chicken pretty much, when we took that lid off, they were the color of poop. It looked like 2 pieces of poop in a pot. And I was like, man, I don't know that I'm going to eat that. And so we mixed our cream of chicken and our vegetables and all that. We cooked it down. It'd been cooking for a while. And then you got there. About the time it was done, you were like, man, I'm starving. I'm like, well, that's good because we got something to eat. We're ready. And so we're like, here, try this.
And you didn't tell me what it was at first.
I just gave you a bite of this stew we made. And you put the bite in, and you're like, yeah, that's good.
Great flavor.
Great flavor. Yeah. And you just kept chewing and looking at us. And like 5 minutes go by. You said, what am I eating?
Stuff was like rubber.
I said, it's goose. And you said, goose? Goose.
I just remember him telling me he chewed and he chewed and he chewed.
It's like when you get it had a great flavor. It tasted like chicken but looked like beef.
Yeah.
And it was the weirdest thing. And you know, when you get just a steak that's so overcooked, it's like chewing leather or a baseball glove, and you get right in here,
that strain,
it starts hurting real bad. I got to that point, and I was like, I'm sorry, y'all, I can't swallow this, I'll choke, and so I had to spit it out.
There's a second part of this story, though.
Yep.
Later that night, we'd all been, I think we had a guitar, we were goofing off and just doing whatever, and we got hungry, and I still had what was left of that goose sitting to the side. And I took one of the legs and it still had the foot on it, and I threw it on our little cooking griddle thing, salted it up, and at the time it was a big thing for people to be like, man challenge, do this stupid thing. I
forgot about that.
And so I took that leg off and I looked at you, I said, eat this. And you said, no, I'm not eating that. I said, man challenge. And you said, okay.
Forgot about those times.
So you take this leg, and I mean, it looked pretty good. And actually, I took a bite after, and it was pretty good because I cooked the other one up. So cooking goose over a fire is a much better way of doing it than boiling it in the pot.
Yeah.
But you took
Like
a
smoking
bite,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he took a bite, and I will never forget it because me and Levi are watching you, waiting to see if it's as awful as the first part you ate. I couldn't believe you got talked into eating another piece of it.
Yeah.
When you bit down on that leg, the foot on the end of that goose leg went and stood up.
Something
Hit a
pulled.
tendon.
Something pulled in there.
The foot went flat pointing to. That's how I'm like, what in the world?
You said, I'm not eating this.
Yeah. Well,
Stop. Instead of saying stop, no.
This thing hadn't been dead long enough. Like, good night. Yeah, that was.
Oh.
I forgot about the man challenge
Yeah,
stuff. We
yeah.
did that all the time. I don't know who.
A really easy way to convince someone to do something stupid.
Oh yeah, it was like I'm sure when you were younger they did the same type of stuff.
Now you take a drink and people start putting stuff in it, barbecue sauce,
Oh, gosh.
or just put stuff in it so dare you to drink it and all that stuff. And,
I'll never forget that though. You bit down, and I mean, in motion with your jaw biting down, that foot just raised up on the end of it. It was the wildest thing.
Yeah, that's why they cut them off for people to eat, I guess.
Because the whole time you're chewing, it'd be going like this.
Flap, flap, flap.